Good morning, everyone. If you would please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
I hereby open the executive session for, get your list, HB 380, and I recognize Representative Rhodes to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move ITL.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Prue. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure. I do apologize. That is the one bill that I do not have in front of me, but if I'm remembering correctly, that bill is taking away the penalty if you are caught selling your medical cannabis. And the reason that penalty was put at that level was because the other body was not really in favor of the therapeutic cannabis program, and they set that penalty at that level for a reason. So I know the testimony we heard is that nobody's doing that, so the whole thing is ridiculous. At the end of the day, if nobody's doing it, then I guess we don't have anything to worry about. If nobody's being charged with it anyway, it's just going to stay there and it's going to be left alone.
Representative Prue, would you like to speak to your second?
No, thank you.
It's open for discussion. Representative Newell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment for this bill. I just handed it out. I'm not sure exactly how that works, if I can introduce it.
We're in discussion, so you can discuss the amendment and
Sure.
tell us why it would be a good idea to adopt it.
Okay, so the bill itself, I think that's a pretty accurate description of what the bill does. Although, you know, as my colleague said, we have heard that this has not been an issue, and that there is a difference that this is unnecessary for the penalties to be that high. What the amendment does is it actually just accommodates the rest of the bill. So if this is going to be instituted, there are places in the statute where it needed to be updated. So really the amendment is just kind of a housekeeping saying if we were to change this, if we were to pass this bill, we would need to update other areas of the statute in order to do that. So the amendment doesn't change anything about the initial intent or what the bill does in the first place. It's just housekeeping.
So the amendment is, if we're going there anyway, let's do this while we're here type of thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so did you want to tell us about why the bill is a good idea then?
Sure. Yeah, I think it only makes sense. And we have only heard from folks who we've only heard from folks that this has not been an issue. I know last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, we went over very similar legislation, and fundamentally, the idea was that these consequences or penalties were set so high because there was a fear that folks who participated in the program might engage in profit off of that and take advantage of that situation. We have not seen that happen. And so really, I think this is just kind of meeting the moment, and the fact that we really don't need to hold them to such a high standard. It has not proven to be the case. And, you know, many people, even who were supportive of this being structured in this way in the first place, you know, have looked back and said, yeah, we really haven't encountered any of these issues, and there's no need for us to set the penalties that high.
Thank you. Further discussion. Representative Means.
A person who actually does this is already subject to the revocation of their registry card, and they're also subject to a Class A felony for violating the Controlled Drug Act. So to actually have a separate penalty on top of that for something like this seems excessive. And as Representative Newell said, I think back in the day when we were, first wondering, how people would behave when therapeutic cannabis became legalized, I think that it was part of a compromise to actually adopt that that penalty. But because of the experience we've had over the last few years, it seems excessive. And even though there may not be a lot of people who are actually charged with it, the idea of charging somebody with a Class A felony and another felony on top of that seems extremely excessive for a drug that we've actually agreed to legalize in this committee this year. So I would urge we take a second look at this.
Representative Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I really want to uplift what my two colleagues have said already, but this isn't removing penalties entirely. It's just eliminating duplicative penalties. And when individuals were testifying, basically all the testimony we got on this bill was in support, including from DHHS, who believes the current statutes are outdated and not relevant anymore. And one member who came to testify described this basically as the exact definition of discrimination, because we are penalizing people because of their status, doing an extra penalty because of their status as a therapeutic cannabis patient, and not anything to do with the actual, quote unquote crime itself, because they're already getting the same penalty as everyone else for selling if they did. And then, like Representative Muse said, they would also be losing their medical card. So this is just giving another felony just for the sake of it. And that's why it's duplicative and not necessary at this point. And I really hope, that everyone can give this another thought.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion on the floor is ITL.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative Lascelles,
Yes.
Representative Devoid,
Yes.
Representative Peternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Linda Harriet Gathright,
No.
Representative Muse,
No.
Representative Newman,
No.
Representative Murphy.
No.
The clerk votes no. Representative Newell,
No.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
9-6.
9-6, motion carries. Minority reports, let me see, what is today? Today's Friday. By Monday morning, please. And I hereby close the executive session. I hereby open the executive session of House Bill 387, and I recognize Representative Lascelles for a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I move ought to pass on H. Bill 387.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Prue. Would you like to speak to your motion, Representative? So,
Yes, this is the famous balloon bill, which is it's meant to send a signal for folks who are well-meaningly celebrating some sort of occasion and turning loose 20 or more helium-filled balloons to go up into the atmosphere. This isn't meant to totally throw somebody in jail because of this, because we understand it has become kind of a cultural thing, but we know that these balloons, when they land, they are particularly bad for wildlife, whether it be birds or fish or whatever. So I think this is a good bill for sending a signal to folks that it's not okay, even though it's pretty and it's fun and all that sort of thing. It's not okay to send all these balloons up in the air because they have to land somewhere.
thank you. Representative Prue, would you like to speak to your second?
So I agree wholeheartedly, especially the effect on the wildlife on the planet. And I get it, it's a nice thing to do, but we really need to start changing that to take care of our environment and our wildlife. We owe them that.
Thank you. I would just reiterate that this bill the penalty is a violation level offense with a fine, and you have to release more than 20 of these balloons. So, to Representative Lascelles' point, we're not, trying to throw the book at anyone, but we do want to raise awareness and see if we can't curb these things being released into the wildlife. Further discussion, Representative Muse.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, this is an important bill to those of us who live in coastal communities. Most of the states who have enacted this bill already are coastal states like New Hampshire. We have a huge estuary system. We've got Great Bay. We've got Sagamore Creek. We don't have much coastline, but what we have is worth protecting, and the wildlife in it is worth protecting too. So I'm happy we're moving in this direction.
Thank you. Further discussion. Seeing none, I ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion on the floor is ought to pass.
Vice Chair Rhodes? Representative Prue?
Yes.
Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative Devoyd?
Yes.
Representative Peternell?
Yes.
Representative Paquette?
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier?
Yes.
Representative Peoples?
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright?
Yes.
Representative Muse?
Yes.
Representative Newman?
Yes.
Representative Murphy?
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell?
Yes.
Chairman Roy?
Chair votes yes.
15-0.
15-0. Any objection to consent? Seeing none, it will go on consent. I hereby close the executive session. With that, I open the executive session on House Bill 405, and I was going to ask Representative Harry Gathright if someone. Oh, excuse me. Never mind. 397. And ask if someone would like to make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I make a motion that we ought to pass on HB 397.
I'll second it. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, we had quite a bit of testimony on it. I think we're good.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask clerk, what?
Very, very quickly, we did hear a lot of support from lake associations for this bill, and I think it's important for us to be responsive to that kind of feedback. These are the people who are closest to the situation, who are the most affected. So I'm glad we're listening to them.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, the motion on the floor is ought to pass. I ask clerk to call the roll.
Vice Chair Rhodes?
Yes.
Representative Prue?
Yes.
Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative Devoyd?
Yes.
Representative Peternell?
Yes.
Representative Paquette?
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier?
Yes.
Representative Peoples?
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright?
Yes.
Representative Muse?
Yes.
Representative Newman?
Yes.
Representative Murphy?
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell?
Yes.
Chairman Roy?
Chair votes yes.
15-0.
Any objection to consent? Seeing none, it will go on consent. I close the executive session. I open the executive session on House Bill 405 and recognize Representative Rhodes to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move amendment 0811H for House Bill 405.
Seconded by Representative.
We need 5.
I'm sorry, what's that, Representative?
We need 5 minutes.
We'll take 5 minutes for everyone to go ahead and take a look at that. 5 minutes for everyone to take a look at that amendment.
Let's go. Hello. Let's move out. Yep.
I want to unplug this thing. Well, there's got to be a number somewhere. I mean, 5 is just as dangerous, but
Okay, we're back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the amendment has two parts. It's the whole amendment, as you can see, is rather long. So the original, this is a replace all, by the way. So the original bill came to us, and it was to be a study commission for human trafficking, sex trafficking. So we've really come to the conclusion that this particular subject has been studied. It has been intensely looked at over the last couple of years. And what we found is we have all of these different task force that are all working on this. They're doing great things, but they're all doing it individually. So what we decided to do was actually make a commission, not a study committee. So now the commission is going to bring all of those stakeholders that have done all of this intense work, bring them to the same table at the same time, so that there can be one or many written goals that everybody agrees to and is working at the same time towards that exact goal. Additionally, we asked for the interim study report. So if we do have to bring out future legislation, the hope would be that we can bring it out whenever we all come back at the beginning of next year. The other piece is, oh, and if you look, we also made it say illicit massage parlors. We want to be very clear that we are not saying that a person that is running a massage parlor is doing that illegally. That is why it specifically says illicit massage businesses. We do not want anybody to think that we're confusing therapeutic massage businesses with illicit massage businesses. The other piece is we have an increased penalty. So it's a misdemeanor if you are allowing a person to use, say, a front to do these kind of horrific crimes. So we have made that be, instead of a misdemeanor, it's going to be a Class B felony. If the person that is forced into this horrific life is a minor, it is going to be a Class A felony. And that's a very short synopsis of all of this.
Thank you. Representative Murray, did you second this?
I did.
Would you like to speak to that?
I think the vice chair covered it very well.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is to adopt the amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle's,
Yes.
Representative Devoid,
Yes.
Representative Peternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
15-0.
The amendment is adopted. Representative Rhodes, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move ought to pass as amended for House Bill 405.
Seconded by Representative Murray. Would you like to speak further to your motion?
No, thank you.
Representative Murray? Further discussion?
Yes.
Representative Muse?
I wanted to say that one of the things that we are typically reluctant to do is to increase a penalty. And one of the things that I wanted to do is to point out that the penalties in this bill are not enhanced penalties or increased penalties for anybody. What we're doing is we're penalizing a different group of actors. So under our current statute, trafficking in minors or forcing other people into trafficking is already a Class A felony. What this particular penalty clause would do is it would penalize the operators of these illicit trafficking facilities, the people who secure the leases, the people who make it easy for these folks to jump around from place to place to place in our communities. My understanding is we have 6 places like this, a half a dozen places like this already on the seacoast. And we have to do something about it. I think the fact that Massachusetts has changed their law to something similar as New Hampshire has really forced us to act on this. And I hope that this bill will have the effect that we want it to have. Thank you.
Thank you. I would add to that as well. I agree. This problem right now is particularly disturbing because it's not just one of prostitution. It's one of forced trafficking and prostitution. And it bothers me greatly to know that, every night when I go to bed, that there's women in the state of New Hampshire who are being held against their will and forced to do this somewhere. And I hope that this is a first step towards eradicating this blight on our society and towards freeing these women. With that, I ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is ought to pass with amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle,
Yes.
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Peternel,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Duchenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
15-0.
Any objection to consent? Seeing none, it will go on consent. I close the executive session. I hereby open the executive session on House Bill, which one am I on now? 416. And this is, I recognize myself to make a motion. I'm going to move that we reconsider House Bill 416. We actually took action on this already, and we held on to it. And I had made a commitment to the sponsor to wait for an amendment, and it totally got away from me. And that amendment has since been brought, and I believe this is a good bill that we should take a second look at. So my motion is to reconsider. Need a second. Seconded by Representative Murphy. And I believe I just spoke to it already, so I would ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is to reconsider House Bill 416.
Vice Chair Rhodes, Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle,
Yes.
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Peternel,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Duchenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
15-0.
15-0, the motion to reconsider passes. At this point,
Draw the motion to retain.
so the way this works now, I believe, is we're going to vote again. The last motion was to retain, and we're going to vote hopefully not to retain, and then I will make a new motion. So I'd ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is on retaining House Bill 416. No.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
No.
Representative Prue,
No.
Representative LaSalle,
No.
Representative Devoyd,
No.
Representative Peternel,
No.
Representative Paquette,
No.
Representative Saborn Duchenier,
No.
Representative Peoples,
No.
Representative Harry Gathright,
No.
Representative Muse,
No.
Representative Newman,
No.
Representative Murphy.
No.
The clerk votes no. Representative Newell,
No.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes no.
15-0.
The motion for retaining fails. I recognize myself to make a motion, and I would introduce amendment number 0191H. Second by Representative Prue. That's right. And this amendment was provided to me by the sponsor, and it changes the authority to enforce this is to all officers in the state. We already discussed what it does. People throwing yard waste into the lakes and ponds. In the first offense, any person who purposely or recklessly violates this paragraph shall be guilty of a violation. It's just a violation. It's no one's going to jail. This is really, again, almost like the balloons, to raise public awareness so that people understand, hey, you can't be throwing the stuff from your yard into the pond or into the lake, because it will cause these algae blooms, which are very expensive for local residents. It's bad for the wildlife. It's bad for tourism. It's bad for a lot of things. So further discussion. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree and fully support this amendment. I think this is a step in one of the things that we're trying to do as a state in terms of environmental and public health protection. And this just furthers it. I agree too about violation level status. Education and information provided to citizens is important, and I think that's a first step, and would serve as a reminder, but also address the problem when people don't care or don't respond appropriately. So I think it's a great bill, and I fully support the amendment, and we'll support it when we get a vote.
Thank you. Representative Prue.
I think this is a good first step. And I would like to hope that if this continues, that we step up the penalties to drive the point home, because I believe doing this is going to have a large impact on our waterways if we don't stop it.
Thank you, Representative. Representative LaSalle.
Yes, I would like to lend my support to this also. I think it's a matter of education. And if you can go to your neighbor who has been throwing yard waste in the lake forever and say, hey, have you heard that this is no longer okay? It's against the law to do this. Most good neighbors would then say, oh, I didn't realize that, and I'll stop that. So I think there's an attitudinal change, a cultural change that has to take place. And like the balloon, we're not going to throw anybody in jail. It's just a matter of people understanding that it's not okay to do this.
Thank you, Representative. I would also point out that, our immediately comes to mind is, your neighbor just doing it. But there's lawn care people that come through and might do, 9 or 10 houses are on a lake. And that's a lot of stuff if they decide they're going to dump it in the water. Versus go to the landfill and maybe have to pay. So it's important to do this. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is to adopt the amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle,
Yes.
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Peternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
15-0.
15-0. The amendment is adopted. I recognize myself for a motion of ought to pass with amendment.
Second.
Second by Representative Murphy. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll. Ought to pass with amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Absolutely.
Representative LaSalle,
Yes.
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Peternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
15-0.
15-0. Any objection to consent? Seeing none, it goes on consent. I close the executive session. I open the executive session on House Bill 445. I recognize myself to make a motion, and I move ought to pass.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Rhodes. This bill, I brought this bill because of a couple things. I've been working with the law enforcement now for a while in New Hampshire, as in part as my role as a member of the Accreditation Commission and also as the head of this committee. And one thing that I think we all have become aware of is the unbelievable lack of law enforcement, people willing to work in the field. Every department I know is having a hard time recruiting. Everybody's short. And I think that we need to come together, the various agencies in the state and law enforcement, and put our heads together in how we can address this and how we can increase recruitment and entice people from the military, from universities, from high schools to think about law enforcement as a career and look at what might be holding people back from doing so. One of my ideas that I had that I would like them to look at is cooperating with the university system to help possibly get some type of tuition waivers for people who agree to serve for a certain amount of time and things of that nature. So this is a very serious problem for our law enforcement in the state right now, and I would ask for everyone's support. Would you like to speak to your second? Further discussion? Representative Muse.
This is a time when it's increasingly difficult to attract folks to public service. And I think law enforcement, to a large extent, is bearing the brunt of this. But we're also seeing this increasingly in other areas, too. So I think that sending the message that public service has value, real value to our state and to our country, is a good thing. So I'll be supporting this bill.
Thank you. Representative LaSalle.
Yes, I also will be supporting this bill, and I think it's important that we expand the horizons with respect to our recruiting efforts. And if we can entice people who don't necessarily have a tie to New Hampshire, but are from outside of the region, then we increase the ethnic, the racial composite of the people that are applying for our positions, and I think that's a good thing. And if we are so parochial that we restrict our recruitment to just our nephews or something, that's not good. We have to expand our horizons. So I'm in wholehearted support to this.
Thank you, Representative. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion on the floor ought to pass, and I'd ask clerk to call the roll.
Vice Chair Rhodes?
Yes.
Representative Prue?
Yes.
Representative LaSalle?
Yes.
Representative Petternow?
Yes.
Or sorry, wait. Well, sure. Representative DeVoyd?
Yes.
Representative Paquette?
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier?
Yes.
Representative Peoples?
Yes.
Representative Harriet Gathright? Representative Muse?
Yes.
Representative Newman?
Yes.
Representative Murphy?
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell?
Yes.
Chairman Roy?
Chair votes yes.
15-0.
Any objection to consent? Seeing none, it goes on consent. I close the executive session. I open the executive session, House Bill 466. Recognize myself to make a motion. I move ought to pass.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Rhodes. I'll speak to my motion. HB 466 was brought at the request of the Department of Safety. Department of Safety pointed out to us that we have one of, if not the lowest rates of people consenting to take the breathalyzer tests in the country. Our accidents and fatalities due to drunken driving are getting worse. Our roads are getting more dangerous, and we have to do something. Right now, there's no difference between refusing to take the breath test or taking the breath test. The penalty is the same. So why would anyone take the breath test and give the evidence of their insobriety to the police? So what this does is it breaks that so that it is a harsher penalty if you refuse to take the test. It also, on the other end, does away with the minimum mandatory sentence if you're convicted on one part of it. So it's a good balancing act, and it just makes it just a little bit stiffer so that people are incentivized to cooperate and take the test. And it's important to remind people that as part of accepting the driver's license, they agree in advance to do this, and we need to remind them that they're violating that agreement by not taking the test. Further discussion? Representative Muse.
One of the things about this bill is that with the advent of body cams, the advantage of breathalyzer consent, I think, is a little bit more questionable than it's been in the past. Body cams have become much more prevalent. I also think that this is taking somebody's license away in a state like New Hampshire when we already have penalties that allow their license to be taken away for this offense. It can really be a life-changing type of an impact for people. I know that one of the things we've discussed when this bill has come up before us before is the need or the desirability for the state police and other agencies to do more communication so people understand the penalties for refusal. I haven't seen that. I've looked for it. I look for it online. I don't think anything like that has been done. I think all that's happened is the same bill that came before us last year was resubmitted again this year with really not anything having been done. So it's hard for me to support this one.
Thank you. Representative Prue.
So I get it. Having your license taken away because you're out driving drunk affects your life. What really affects somebody's life is when that drunk driver hits an innocent family because they got let off easy because they refused to take the test. So taking the test should be the deal. If you choose not to, it should be at least the same penalty. If not worse, than taking the test. You at least have a chance of proving that you're innocent by taking the test. So I will be supporting this 110%.
Thank you. I'll close by saying that this, as I said, this was brought, and the representative's correct, it was brought last year. The same people at the Department of Safety, Mr. Edwards has asked me to file it again. And since last year, there's been more deaths and more accidents due to drunk driving, and that's why they brought it. And so really nothing's changed. The only thing that's changed from now to then is that this year it's going to pass. So I'd ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion on the floor is out to pass.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative Lascelles,
Yes.
Representative DeVoid,
Yes.
Representative Paterno,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschrenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harriet Gathright,
No.
Representative Muse,
No.
Representative Newman,
No.
Representative Murphy,
Yes.
Representative, or the clerk votes no, Representative Newell,
No.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
10-5.
10-5, motion carries. And I hereby close the executive session. And we're going to take a 10-minute recess before we take up the next one. I apologize for the delay. Which one are we on now? With that, I open the executive session on House Bill 473, and I recognize
Me, I can do it.
Representative Rhodes to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move ought to pass Amendment 0430H.
Seconded by Representative Murray. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So I have the original bill here in front of me, and I do have a lot of notes. But this specific amendment, we had a gentleman testify, and he was talking about whenever you have a minor that may have therapeutic cannabis, most likely the adult is the one that is retrieving that and then giving it to the child. He brought up actually a very good reason of why he thought that exception needed to be made. And it would be put in, it's on the page 2 of the original bill, it's line 26 that I have highlighted. In this amendment, will actually address that. And I believe the sponsor was here when that was being said. I advised them if they wanted to make this happen, and by God, they did. So here we go.
Would you like to speak to your second, Representative Murray?
I think the vice chair spoke to it very well, but I think it's appropriate when passing this legislation to make sure that we're treating therapeutic cannabis the same as we are treating other prescriptions.
Thank you.
Except it's not a prescription.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. The motions to adopt the amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle's,
Yes.
Representative Devoid,
Yes.
Representative Petternow,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Yes. Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Representative Shear,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
16-0.
The amendment is adopted. I recognize Representative Rhodes to make another motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move ought to pass as amended for House Bill 473.
Seconded by Representative Murray. Would you like to speak further on your motion?
So the bill in front of us, as all of us are aware in this committee, we're always hearing about more drugs that are introduced so they continuously are adding to the controlled drug substance list. So basically what this bill does, and you look all through here, is anywhere methamphetamine related is written, they've edited that to say controlled drug related. They've also added to a person's vehicle to also be included with property. And I believe that is it, but I'm sure that I will be corrected if I'm wrong.
Thank you. Further discussion? Representative Newell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the bill overall. I do have some concerns mostly around the language and how we've expressed this. And so essentially what we've done or what the existing language is, particularly as it stood around methamphetamine. It talked about a variety of different situations where this may make sense or where this would apply. So page 1, line 24, no person shall knowingly engage in any of the following activities in the presence of a child or vulnerable adult. And then it gives, this is one example, right? And then the next example is in the residence of a child or vulnerable adult. And then the next example is in a building, blah, blah, blah. So it is kind of separating. It's not saying and it's not that like the in the presence applies to everything. And two of the examples that it gives is it says in a room being offered to the public for overnight accommodations or in any multiple unit residential building. And I just have deep concerns that that this is vague enough to allow for, someone who is staying in a hotel room who, for example, did not know that there was residue from someone doing this before, that this might be something that was left over. It leaves room, in my opinion, it leaves room for misunderstandings of the law because of just those two particular things and those two particular things being examples where this would apply. So those are my concerns. I haven't decided yet whether I'm I'm going to vote on the overall bill. And I honestly wish that that could just be kind of sectioned out in a way that really provides for a lack of misunderstanding in that situation.
Okay, that makes sense. I would say this is a first committee. It's going to a second committee. It's going to finance. If you feel like you could support it with an amendment, we just don't have time to do anything further with it at this point. 1 second, Representative Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in response to Representative Knoll, I think the example that you gave, I think that's valid. But when I actually step back for a second and imagine that scenario, I think if I were to go into a hotel room with my child and I were to notice something like that, the first thing I'm going to do is obviously go to somebody at the front desk and ask for another room. And then I would think at that point, the authorities are probably going to be called. So I think obviously this is going after someone that knows that they're doing that, right? And so I with respect, I don't really see the example that you're trying to give as even being something that would be remotely confused with that. Because you as the parent didn't do that. Like you went into a room and that was happening. And obviously you're removing your child and yourself as soon as you see that as a situation. So, but I could be misunderstanding.
Doesn't it say knowingly?
Yeah, it does.
Okay,
That's what
so
I'm
yeah,
saying.
you'd have to prove that way. Representative Scher.
That was my point. All the residences or types of rooms or buildings referred to in that section, Roman numeral 1, it starts out saying no person shall knowingly engage in any of the following activities. And then at the end of that section has A through D. So somebody being knowingly present in a place where there are drugs and there are kids, but is not manufacturing or attempting to manufacture, storing any chemical substance, et cetera. As long as they're not doing any of those A through D, they're not going to be in trouble. So if they come into a room that was rented to somebody before and there is drug residue there, they're not going to be in trouble unless they start doing any one of A through D.
Thank you. Okay. Representative Newman.
So I just have a question while I'm thinking about this. When this law, and it applies to the people and does all the things that it says, what is the kind of things of circumstances where they're going to find this? How will this come to the attention of law enforcement in any of the circumstances?
I would suggest probably through an investigation of like DCYF or somebody's there, social workers there, and they see this and they report it to law enforcement, something like that. Let me see, what did you say? Yeah, or schools could tell. Yeah, yeah. Representative Murray.
Or like when I've seen it come up before is if a minor has taken to the hospital because they've ingested something and then
That's usually how it's found.
yeah, and then the healthcare workers, I think are mandatory reporters, and there would then be investigation based on like how did this child get, how were they able to ingest this stuff, and then they would be able to prosecute the parents for exposing them to that.
Can I ask one question? So in this, it seems to be the motel room situation. So somebody goes there, they go with their kid, there's drugs left by somebody in a drawer somewhere, they don't ever see it, and they check out, and they clean the room the next day, and then they find the drugs in the drawer there, and the previous person obviously spent the night in a room that had drugs in it but had no knowledge of it. Would that happen, or would they have to
That
go to
goes
court
back
and
to-
then defend themselves?
That goes back to the knowingly, and furthermore, the police in any scenario like that would have a really high bar to figure out to tie that in a common used area like that.
Just wanted to
No, it's fine.
clarify that. Thank
Representative
you.
Chair.
And also, they're not doing any of the A through D.
That's important to note that it's no secret that I believe that this case is this is tied to a specific case. The impetus for this, there was another suggested amendment that I'm not going to take up. It's not from the committee, but it would increase the statute of limitations to 10 years, and I'm disinclined to take that up because in my mind that it really borders on a bill of attainder because that this is specific to a certain case. And while it may not technically be, it certainly violates the spirit of that constitutional amendment where you put something to get a certain person. And if we want to charge a certain person, if we have to extend the statute of limitations to do that, then in my mind, that's really walking the line of bill of attainder, which would be unconstitutional. I know bill of attainder is when you actually charge someone, but I just don't like the idea of doing that to get one person, because you end up catching other people in your net that you've thrown. And whenever you extend statute of limitations, it's not good for either party. You end up with witnesses disappearing or memories failing and testimony changing. Every year that goes by, the case gets worse. And 10 years is a long time to have to be able to defend yourself and remember where you were and who was there and who you spoke to. I can barely remember yesterday. So that's why, just for everyone's information, why I'm not taking that. Representative, yep. No, it's one I got this morning. Someone handed me. It's not from this committee. It's. Oh, maybe, yeah. I don't know. It's, yeah. Does anyone want to discuss that further? No. Okay. Seeing none, the motion on the floor is ought to pass with amendment, correct? We adopted the amendment? Yes.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle's,
Yes.
Representative Devoid,
Yes.
Representative Peternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschrenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Representative Scheer,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
16-0.
Any objection to consent? Seeing none, we'll go on consent. I hereby close the executive session. I open the executive session on HB 482. And this, I recognize myself for a motion. I move ought to pass.
Second.
Second by Representative Rhodes. This is another bill that was brought to me by the Department of Safety. This is a very important bill for them and for all of us. They testified and told us how the accidents, severity of the accidents and the deaths are increasing on our highways for people driving over 100 miles an hour. You know, I like to go fast as much as the next guy, but when you're getting over 100 miles an hour, the impact of a vehicle collision against another vehicle coming your way is astronomical, and the chances of surviving it are pretty close to zero. A lot of these folks are from out of state. They're coming up on the fast motorcycles and their cars, and especially during the summer, and it's causing people to die. So what they've asked is to stiffen the penalty. So it's going to say now whoever upon any way drives a vehicle at a speed 100 miles per hour or greater and thereby violates any of the provisions of this title or any rule adopted by the director shall be, notwithstanding the provisions of section, what is that? LX11. Come on, somebody who has their Roman numerals down. What is that?
15 or
What?
16.
What's L?
LX is.
LV, LL, LV,
Yeah.
LI.
Kids, if you're following, pay attention in school. 62. Guilty of a violation, fine not less than $750 plus a penalty assessment for the first offense and a $1,000 plus penalty assessment for subsequent offenses. And his or her license or operating privileges shall be revoked for a period of 90 days for the first offense and from 90 days to 1 year for a subsequent offense. So you get caught going 100, you lose your license for 90 days, and you get a $750 fine. You do it again, you get a $1,000 fine, and you can lose it anywhere from 90 to a year, depending on the judge. I think this is sending a serious message that if you want to drive on our ways, keep it to 99 and under. And further discussion. I don't know if the state police endorsed my last comment. No. Yes, Representative Muse.
Thank God for cruise control.
I just want to say that this is really egregious behavior, so I'm going to vote for it. But one of the things that that I do question is, our continuing reliance on increasing penalties. Some of these people who are driving over 100 miles an hour have $100,000 cars. The fines aren't going to make a great deal of difference to people like that. People like that are going to find other ways to get around while their license is in suspension. One of the things that I would ask in the future is that we think beyond increasing penalties. What are some of the other things that we could realistically do to do something about this problem? Because our solution always seems to be, gee, if we increase the penalties, it'll send a message that will change behavior. But we're still going to have people who are going to drive over 100 miles an hour on our roads. So, in a similar way to the way I think we've responded to fentanyl with kind of all of the above list of solutions, I think we kind of need a all of the above list of solutions to problems like this. And so in the future, it would be great to see more things like that come in front of us.
Thank you. Further discussion. Representative Lascelles.
I would like to back up what Representative Muse just said. And in my case, I feel that we need increased enforcement on some of these situations. And the way that I feel it would be good, and I know other people do not agree, but I noticed the other day that you can now buy a car off the dealer's lot, standard equipment more than 1,000 horsepower. And I would submit to you that no one needs a car with 1,000 horsepower. And what I would like to see, backing up what Representative Muse said, is that at the point of registration, that we somehow put extra registration fees on these high horsepower vehicles, and then give that to the public safety department to increase enforcement. Because I agree, somebody that's driving a Ferrari or something is not going to be deterred by some $200 fine for speeding. So I would like to see something tied to horsepower at the point of registration, and then give it to the state police.
Thank you. I look forward to your bill. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am certainly going to support this bill. I think any of us paying attention, any citizen paying attention, only has to listen to the news, look at a newspaper, look online, and daily we are seeing impaired drivers killing people, killing themselves, causing accidents. We certainly have a challenge with staffing law enforcement, so the enforcement is that much harder. Enforcing it is certainly important, but having people do the right thing is equally important. And I understand that we can't find our way out of this, or there's no one solution, but I think we have a number of bills before us, some of that we've already heard and some that we've not yet exec, that will go to addressing this, because it's a huge problem. It's not going away. Nothing we're doing right now is working. So I think it's a step that we need to take.
Thank you. I agree with everything that's been said, except for the part about not needing the 1,000 horsepower. So I totally need 1,000 horsepower. However, that being said, I agree. We need to look at everything. I think that we should also look at insurance. We get penalized when we make a mistake, but there's not many benefits when you don't. I'd like to see the insurance companies incentivize good driving more than they do, and bring some of our insurance rates down. But that being said, this is about speeding and going over 100 miles an hour, and it seems like everyone's in support. So I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative Lascelles,
Yes.
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Peternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Duchenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy,
Yes.
Representative, or the clerk votes yes. Representative Newell?
Yes.
Representative Shear?
Yes.
Chairman Roy?
Chair votes yes.
16-0.
Any objection to consent? Seeing none, I will go on consent and close the executive session. Next, I open the executive session on House Bill 528, and I recognize Representative Shaborn. Oh, no, it was Representative Paquette. Sorry.
I move ought to pass with amendment 0488H.
Seconded by Representative Murray.
So this amendment changes the original bill. The first one was a felony. This lessens the penalty to a violation with a fine. It does not decriminalize the use of psilocybin, but it changes it from a felony to a fine
Thank you. Would you like to speak
for
to
your
the
first
second?
offense.
Okay. Would you like to speak to the second, Representative Murray?
Sure, thank you. I think it was clear from testimony that, not only is this not really a dangerous drug, but it also has medicinal benefits that people are unable to take advantage of currently because of its classification under the Controlled Drug Act. And while entirely removing it might be too big a step for this legislature to take right now, I think this is a good compromise to start with. And hopefully people will be able to treat their conditions if they need to and not face a felony for doing so.
Thank you. Further discussion. Representative Muse.
Yeah, I would like to say that, during the public hearing, we actually heard some pretty compelling testimony from one of our colleagues, and I think that really helped. In the past, we've heard that psilocybin is extremely useful for doing things like treating PTSD in veterans. We've heard that it's actually been a breakthrough medication for folks who have dealt with mental illness issues for many, many years. I think where I'm at on this is this particular change to the bill allows it to be treated more like cannabis from a penalty perspective and less like fentanyl, which I think is a good thing given the therapeutic benefits. It also gives us time to weigh and measure what the potential therapeutic value of this is, to wait for studies to come out before we make any additional decisions on what we're doing. But at this point, it seems that if we already have folks like state representatives who are taking it to to treat conditions that they have, and we have constituents who are also doing the same thing. It's to me, it's increasingly analogous to I think what we saw with cannabis, a decade ago. So it's time to break the log jam, and I hope we pass this.
Thank you. Representative Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I told the sponsor that I would vote for his amendment. He called. He made a very compelling case. If for anything other than the fact that I have tremendous respect for him, and when he testifies, he's the one person I know ever want to go up on the House floor against. But I just have to say for the record that all this conversation about this being medicine, that's almost make me want to say no. I am not a doctor. I don't know that any of us in here are, listen, no, that's not right. So if we're doing this because we're taking away the penalty, that's one thing. But doing it because we're trying to say that we're making it be medicine, that's the part that I'm not okay with. I will vote for it. I'm saying that.
Thank you. Further discussion. I'm torn on this. I generally do not agree in full legalization, and as this does not do that, it reduces it from a felony, which is in line with the bill I passed or that I wrote that decriminalized or defelonized first offense possession. So I'm going to support this. I do believe there is medicinal value in this. The VA is looking into it, but in order for us to look at it that way, it's got to be done through the proper processes, which doesn't mean having our citizens at home experimenting to see what makes them feel better. I'd like to see it done through proper scientific channels, through university studies and the VA. But having said that, I support this bill lowering it from a felony. We don't need more intoxicated people, but we also don't need more felons. So With that, I ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. Or
Vice,
did we adopt the
or
amendment?
no, adoption of
Oh,
amendment.
we got to adopt the amendment, excuse me.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes on the amendment.
Representative Lascelles,
Yes,
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Paterno,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Representative Shear,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
16-0.
Any objection to consent? No, never mind. It's still just the amendment. Further discussion? Seeing none, ask the clerk. What? Oh, yeah, I suppose you're right. Motion?
OTP with amendment?
There you go. Did you get both of those? Okay, ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is ought to pass with amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Reluctantly, yes.
Representative Lascelles,
yes,
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Paterno,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright, Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Representative Shear,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
16-0.
Any objection to consent? Seeing none, it'll go on consent. Now hereby close the executive session. I open the executive session on House Bill 551, and I recognize the Representative Rhodes to make a motion.
Representative Prue.
Representative Prue to make a motion.
I make a motion to move amendment 2025-05H, 058-3H.
Second.
Second by Representative Rhodes. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, as I understand, there used to be a separate license before we had the instant check system, that if you were selling to a person in the state, they had to reach back to the local police department, notify them that they were selling this pistol. The police department would have to reach back and say, yes, you can sell it to them or not. So that has become unnecessary. There's still some definitions about selling to an out-of-state person that are left in here. Again, so I think it's just getting rid of an old law that is no longer necessary or in use, and removing that separate license to sell a pistol with all those things hanging over it.
Thank you. Representative Rhodes, would you like to speak to your second?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the amendment is basically what Representative Bruce said. At the end of the day, you already have to have an FFL to sell a firearm. However, you also still already have to go to your town, either to your planning board or your zoning board, to put in a business. So what the amendment does is still leaves the other part of the statute intact. So you still have to go through a licensed dealer if you want to transfer a firearm from someone out of state. There's always question. There's always this term, this loophole. But if I were to go to, say, Pennsylvania and buy a firearm, I can't just bring that back to Pennsylvania. It has to be transferred to an FFL here in New Hampshire. I have to go there to pick it up. This keeps all that still intact, and it still keeps the part about only being able to sell to somebody you know personally. But the separate license is no longer needed because it being a federal license.
Thank you. In New Hampshire, you have to have two licenses if you want to sell guns. One of them from the feds and one from local. This just gets rid of the local. The local is as was said, an antique left over from days before the FFL and the instant background check procedure. So we're just doing away with one. And as the Representative Rhodes said, the police department's still kept in the loop because you have to go to them first to get your FFL, because the federal government calls them to make sure they're aware that you're getting an FFL.
With that, I'm going to recess for 5 minutes so that the folks can look at the amendment, just to make sure they can read it. So 5 minutes.
If you're going to sell it to me, then I'm making it okay because people using it as
All right, I'm opening the executive session on House Bill 218 FN. I recognize Representative Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move ought to pass for Amendment 0765H.
Second. Speak to your amendment.
Thank you. So we had a bill brought to us, and I understand it was up in Wolfboro. Somebody asked for an initial report, and for whatever reason was not given that. So since that original bill has been filed, that police department has updated their policy so that they are going to give somebody a copy of an initial police report for a crime. However, if you Google different police departments in the state of New Hampshire, some police departments charge $5 per page. Some charge if it's electronic. Some don't charge anything at all. Some charge a flat $20. The point is that if you are the victim of a crime, you should not have to pay for the police report that says that you are the victim of a crime. When you receive that, you are able to start the process if you need any kind of assistance, if you need to hire an attorney. Some people need to possibly get out of their lease. They have to move. Some people have to miss work. This report is going to make it so that this amendment will make it so that everybody is able to receive something from the police department that says that they have a police report, that something happened to them, and be uniform across the state. It will all be free. This is already in the Victims' Bill of Rights. We added the word initial report because we understand that there's generally an investigation that follows after. So that is, we took the Victims' Bill of Rights and we copied it into here, and we put the time frames in there because, you know, sometimes you have holidays, maybe the person that prints those things off is not there for the day. We just gave time frames so the person knows that it will be coming. The max it's going to take is the 15 days or the 7 days.
Thank you. Further discussion. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Representative Rhodes. I think that most of us are on the same page as to recognizing that there's a need for victims to be able to access something in a very short time frame following a crime, for all the, whether it's a lease challenge or for whatever reason that they need time off from work and they have to prove that there's a reason why. The challenge is, I have put in another amendment. The challenge comes for me in that when I asked for that first amendment that we're talking about now to be written, I didn't have some of the information that I have now. And I've been told by my own chief of police that passing the amendment as written would violate 91A. It would remove the ability of law enforcement officers to withhold that initial report. It would be in conflict. And his concern about that was that sometimes there's information in that report that if a crime victim was still living with the perpetrator, the perpetrator would have information that they might not, the prosecuting agency may not want them to have because it could mess up a case. And the last thing I want to do is make it harder for law enforcement to prosecute cases and protect victims. So it comes down to we're on the same page, I think, so in most of this, and I think we're all trying to do the right thing and the same thing, but I just can't support my own amendment if I'm being asked to pass it, knowing that it will complicate the ability of law enforcement and it will direct law enforcement agencies to do something that 91A tells them that they have the right to withhold. So I don't know how to, without a different amendment, I don't know how to make that happen.
Thank you. Representative Scher.
Thank you. Again, I'm in support of the idea here, the concept here. I just want to make it as clear as possible. Certainly, my role as a police commissioner in Portsmouth, the police hate ambiguity. And I think the ambiguity here is the word report. Some people read the word report to mean the report that the victim made to the police. Other people read the word report to mean a police report of what the victim said. Many, many times in police matters, there is no written report authored by the victim about what happened. The huge majority of reports are oral reports to a police officer who then writes a police report. I go through this lengthy and boring distinction because there are police departments, I also know there are police departments who view the word report as it's written as meaning a police report, and they see that covered by 91A. If there were that's my problem here. The Second Amendment that Representative Murphy filed required simply a right to get a confirmation that a crime was reported. I know there's difficulty about the word alleged, but I think that we can get rid of that if need be. But if the victim is just asking for confirmation that they reported a crime on a particular date that occurred at a particular location, then we don't have any problems. But this word report just mucks things up for police departments.
Thank you. I'm going to say this. The Victims' Bill of Rights is existing law. In that, it says they have a right to the police report. This says they have a right to the police report, merely that it's free and they have so many days to give it. The police under 91A have the ability and the authority to redact anything that they feel is covered under 91A under the investigation exemption, but they do not have the right to withhold the entire police report. So I don't care if it's the officer's written report or the victim came in and gave them a written report. Clearly the Victims' Bill of Rights means the police report. So this means the police report. And if they need to redact it, they can redact it and still turn over the report. And then the victim is free to pursue that further if they're saying they're redacting too much. We're just saying it's free. And I think that's the point. Is at the end of the day, we copied the language of existing law. Now you got to give it free. If the police say, well, that's a violation of 91A, they can redact what they feel is a violation that they don't have to turn over. Further discussion? Seeing none. Representative Newman.
I just have a question about the Victims' Bill of Rights that uses the word in the law of police report. Does it have any definition of that? And my follow-up would be, is there not some way we can describe a short report that a victim has reported a crime, and would that be sufficient?
That's almost getting into an unfunded mandate, because they don't do that. You're right. We're asking them, in the amendment is asking them to create a report they don't already do. So if a victim comes in and says, I need this, the police would at that point have to create a special report just for that victim to say you came in on this date and reported a crime. And that's not something they're already doing. We'd asking them to create an extra report. And I don't think that's what we're intending to do here. We're just talking about the regular police report that goes to the prosecutor. And if they need to redact it, they'll have to tell the victim, here's a redacted report, because it's still an open investigation.
It's in the
Representative Paquette.
As someone who's been a victim of crime and had to get documentation to prove so, if I asked for the police report, I needed the police report, and I needed specific information that was in the police report. Having a paper that says that I was the victim of a crime, allegedly, wouldn't be of any help at all.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is to adopt the amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
yes.
Representative Prue,
Confused, but yes.
Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative Devoyd?
Yes.
Representative Peternel?
Yes.
Representative Paquette?
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier?
Yes.
Representative Peoples?
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright?
No.
Representative Muse?
Yes.
Representative Newman?
Yes.
Representative Murphy?
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell?
Yes.
Representative Shear?
No.
Chairman Roy?
Chair votes yes.
14-2.
14-2, the amendment is adopted. Representative Rhodes, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move ought to pass as amended for House Bill 218.
Seconded. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Just one sentence. The word report has been in the Domestic Violence Victims Bill of Rights for 25 years and has always been interpreted to mean initial. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. With that, I'll ask the court to call the roll. The motion is ought to pass with amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes?
Yes.
Representative Prue?
Still confused, but yes.
Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative Devoyd?
Yes.
Representative Peternel?
Yes.
Representative Paquette?
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschenier?
Yes.
Representative Peoples?
Yes.
Representative Harriet Gathright?
No.
Representative Muse?
No.
Representative Newman?
No.
Representative Murphy?
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell?
Yes.
Representative Shear?
No.
Chairman Roy?
Chair votes yes.
12-4.
12-4, just enough to make sure it cannot go in consent. With that, the motion carries. Again, opposition reports or it's not opposition is not the word. Minority report are due by Monday, please. Thank you. And with that, I close that executive session. We have, let me see, 551. We're waiting on an amendment, and 146 we're meeting on an amendment. So we'll be in recess. Check back again at, I guess, 1 until we get those amendments. I'm reopening executive session on House Bill 146. If you recall, we had an amendment, and there was a question as to whether or not the amendment needed to be changed because of the ABC, and the amendment said it replaced section 1 with, and it had A. We checked with OLS, and they said the amendment is fine as it is. It does not affect the existing law. It will only replace the rest of the new bill with just that. So the amendment's fine as it is, according to OLS. If I can actually find it.
Which bill are we talking about now? And they said no problem? We were removing section 3. Okay. If greater minds than mine.
You were talking about removing section C. It was
Yeah.
ABC. So they're saying that because it says replace all of section 1 with just A, it
Sorry.
removes C. So, okay. And this is the body worn camera bill. So I'm gonna, we didn't move this yet already, right? This amendment? We did? So then I'm going to leave it as is. Yeah, myself and Representative Rhodes already moved this amendment last week or earlier this week.
And did it pass? It's all good?
We vote? We didn't vote on it. We stopped. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to vote on the amendment that we already moved when I recessed earlier in the week. This amendment is good as is.
0591H.
Yeah, 0591H. And for those who are here, probably wondering, what are they talking about? Like our replacements? We had a bill on body cameras because body camera footage is only kept for a certain amount of time. And a constituent of someone appealed a traffic citation. And by the time it got to appeal, they'd already destroyed the evidence and he wanted to use it in his defense. So what this bill is doing is saying, if there is a violation level offense, you have to hold on to that until it's resolved. Because prior to that, they didn't. Okay? All right. With that, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is adopt the amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle's,
Yes.
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Peternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborn Deschrenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harriet Gathright,
No.
Representative Muse,
No.
Representative Newman,
No.
Representative Murphy.
No.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell? Yes. Representative Shear?
Yes.
Chairman Roy?
Chair votes yes.
12-4.
12-4. The motion carries. Would you like to make another motion, Representative Rhodes?
Move ought to pass as amended. Oh,
Yes.
ought to pass as amended.
And I second that. And with that, I ask the clerk to call the roll. Wait a minute. Does anyone want to talk about it?
When I look at you, this is the bill itself.
Yeah.
And the last time.
Turn your mic on, Linda.
Sorry. When we talked about it earlier, my understanding was that it was going to be, section C was going to be removed. Well, where?
The amendment says, amend the bill by replacing section 1. Section 1 contains A, B, and C.
Okay,
Now it's only got A.
okay. All right, I guess.
There's a B in statute. No, C was going to be part of this new bill, but it's not anymore. So now the and refers just to the B that's already in statute.
Okay. I know.
Got it? It's a little confusing, but it's what happens when you have to pull parts of statutes and replace them. All right.
Okay.
With that, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. Motion is ought to pass as amended.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle's,
Yes.
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Patternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborin Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright,
I'm gonna say no.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Representative Shear,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
15-1.
15-1. Will there be is there an objection to consent? You do? Okay, then I'll need a minority report. With that, I close the executive session.
Representative Murray, what was the vote for the amendment, please? Just so-
12-4.
Thank you.
Wait.
One of you is going to do majority.
She is.
Oh, I am.
Oh, yeah, this was your. Yeah. I hereby open the executive session on House Bill 551 and recognize Representative Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we had a motion to pass Amendment 0583H, but I would like to withdraw that motion and make a motion to pass 0818H.
I second that.
And
Would you like to speak to the motion?
yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the amendment is the exact same amendment that I already handed you, but Representative Shear noticed that on line 28, the word licensee needed to be changed to the word person to match the rest of the amendment where the word licensee was taken out. I thank him for finding that, and that's what it does. So if you already have the other amendment, it's the only thing that's changed is one word on line 28.
Thank you. Further discussion? Representative Shear.
In all transparency, it was Representative Newman who first picked this up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Newman.
Any further discussion? I think we already talked about this. This takes, I'll just recap it again for our replacement folks. In New Hampshire statute, there's a law requiring someone who's going to sell guns to get a New Hampshire license. And there's also the federal license that you have to have. This does away with the New Hampshire license because why should we charge our citizens for something they already have to pay the federal government to get? And that's basically it. With that, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion is ought to pass with amendment.
Or adoption amendment.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We're a little premature. This is to adopt the new amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yes.
Representative LaSalle's,
Yes.
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Patternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborin Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Representative Shear,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
16-0.
The amendment is adopted. I recognize Representative Rhodes to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move ought to pass as amended for House Bill 551.
Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion on the floor is ought to pass with amendment.
Vice Chair Rhodes,
Yes.
Representative Prue,
Yep.
Representative LaSalle's,
Yes.
Representative Devoyd,
Yes.
Representative Patternell,
Yes.
Representative Paquette,
Yes.
Representative Saborin Deschenier,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Harry Gathright,
Yes.
Representative Muse,
Yes.
Representative Newman,
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Newell,
Yes.
Representative Shear,
Yes.
Chairman Roy,
Chair votes yes.
16-0.
16-0. Any objection to consent? Seeing none, I'll go on consent. With that, I close the executive session. Just for everyone's edification, we were scheduled next Friday to do further executive sessions. Those have been canceled. They're going to be moved to the next week. So next week, the only thing you have is house session. I do need all the reports though from what we've done this week, no later than Monday, so I can get them over and they'll be in the calendar for the following week. Just for the record, Representative Harriet Gathright has withdrawn her objection to consent. Therefore, that bill will be going on the consent calendar. Which number was that? 146 will be on consent.
Before we go, I mean,
Well, that turned out better than I thought. And I don't know who's